that keeps progressive thinking going on all over the world. So, as some of you know, we have C-SPAN here, so we're trying to squish in every single word that we can. So if you get tired, get up, do some stretches, but we're charging on through this program, and it's going to be awesome. So I'd like to introduce Medea Benjamin, my wonderful supervisor. Woo!
Good morning, and we are delighted to be with such a wonderful group of people who have, some of you are coming here for the first time learning about these issues, and many of you are people who have been working on this for years now. And I want to start by summarizing my own journey to this issue and take a moment to reflect on where we are today. My own journey is that when 9/11 happened, I thought my government should respond by finding the individuals who attacked us, not by attacking other nations. But when the U.S. attacked Afghanistan, we were told by the media and our government that we now had these high-tech weapons. We had laser-guided missiles. We had smart bombs. What kind of a term is that, smart bombs? And that we could pinpoint exactly who the bad guys were. And so we as a public should rest assured that our government was only going to hit the bad guys. Well, I don't know about you, but that raised some questions for me. And a week after the bombing started, I went with a group of 3 other women to Pakistan to make our way into Afghanistan to see what was happening. We didn't even have to get into Afghanistan. It was right in Pakistan where we saw civilians, families flooding out because they had been targeted by the U.S. bombs. And the first young woman that I met on the streets of Peshawar in Pakistan was a 13-year-old who was begging for money. And when we asked her story, she took us to her home and told us that her house was near a Taliban base, that her home had been targeted by mistake. Her father and she were out selling candies on the street, came home and found that their home had been blown up, that her 2 brothers had been obliterated, and her mother as well. And all they found were pieces of flesh that were lying around on the ground, on the trees. She said we couldn't even tell who was our mother, who were our brothers. They gathered the pieces and did a burial. Her father became mute, in shock, could no longer work, could no longer talk, and she, at 13 years old, became the head of the household with the rest of her brothers and sisters, and took them out on a trek across the Khyber Pass to get into Pakistan. At that time, I had a 13-year-old daughter, and I thought, how could my daughter ever do anything like that? This heroic young woman who took the rest of her family and her mute father and tried to keep them alive begging on the streets. And I keep that young woman, Roya, in my heart as I do this work. Because our bombs are not smart, our missiles are not smart, war is not smart, bombing people is not smart. We have been doing this for over 11 years now. When will it end? And that's what we're here to talk about. And the more I researched, the more I realized that drones was a part of this configuration that would allow us to keep the wars going, but not putting our own troops at risk, which really is a way of saying that the lives of our people are very sacred, but the lives of other people are not as sacred. And this whole term collateral damage, I mean, that is such an obscene term, because that is people. That is real lives. That is Roya's mother, the pieces of flesh that are lying around on trees. That is what they call collateral damage. And so as I researched more how drones were becoming part of the arsenal somewhat under the Bush administration, but even more so under the Obama administration, I began to hook up with many people in this audience, and we realized there were terrible things happening. That there was a Terror Tuesday meeting at the White House that happened every week, where President Obama would meet with his advisors and set up a kill list. A kill list. That means people have not been charged, they have certainly not been tried, they have certainly not been convicted in any court of law, and yet they are put on a kill list. We found out that there was authorization given to both the CIA and the military to do something called secondary strikes, which means killing people not even that you have identified by name, but people who were doing something that looked suspicious from thousands of miles away in a base here where the drone operators were looking at what was happening in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia. Signature strikes killing people on the basis of suspicious behavior. Does this sound like some obscene kind of racial profiling?
Yeah.
Then we found out that it was the CIA and the most secretive branches of the military, the JSOC, that were in charge, and they weren't even admitting that they had this drone program. This was done totally covertly. What kind of democracy goes around killing people without even letting the public, the Americans even know what they are doing in our name? We realized that there were lots of innocent people being killed, and the U.S. government was not even acknowledging they were being killed, much less apologizing to them, offering some kind of compensation to them, nothing at all. And we also saw that the policy wasn't working, that it wasn't getting rid of Al-Qaeda, it was recruiting for Al-Qaeda. Every single drone strike led more people to join extremist movements. And it has led to millions of people growing anti-American sentiment around the world. This is not a policy that is even working. We also realized that we were creating a model for the rest of the world that said we can violate other countries' sovereignty, we can kill people on the basis of secret information, we can go anywhere we want because the world is now our battlefield, and that we have this amazing technology that we are selling to other countries. So what is this model that we are selling? You know, every time I look at the news, I see more and more countries have now been buying the drones because this is big business. This is big business by U.S. companies, by Israeli companies, by Chinese companies. The last I saw was 87 countries that now have drones. Well, the drone manufacturers will say, oh, but these aren't weaponized drones. These are just surveillance drones. These are drones to track whales and endangered species. These are drones to put out forest fires. Well, maybe some of them are good drones, but you can rest assured that there are many countries right now that are in the process of weaponizing their drones. And then there's the issue right here at home, that the manufacturers have their lobby in Congress, and they have forced the Federal Aviation Administration to open up our airspace to drones by September 2015. Now they will say to us, this will be used by police departments to track your elderly grandfather who has Alzheimer's, who is out lost down the street. But we know what these drones can be used for because we've seen what they're used for overseas. And there is a very slippery slope. There is a very slippery slope becoming a 24/7 surveillance society. We are already a very over-surveilled society. There is a very slippery slope about weaponizing these drones because the experiments that are being done now with police stations getting drones is that these drones are designed to be weaponized. And so we are now linking up with people in the domestic sphere who are concerned about our privacy rights, who are concerned about our safety because these drones crash all the time. In fact, there was one that just crashed in upstate New York a few days ago. So these are some of the connections that we are making. And I want to say as we begin this summit that we are already making a huge difference. If you look back into 2012 at one of the polls that was taken, it said that 83% of Americans thought it was fine to use these drones against terrorist suspects. And remember, a suspect is somebody never convicted of anything. I was quite shocked when I saw that, because it was a majority of Republicans, Democrats, independents. Well, you look at the polls today, and that has dropped dramatically. It's now about 60% of Americans. We are on the way to making it a minority of Americans.
Yeah!
And that is so important because we must change public opinion. Because these people who are elected by us in the Congress and the White House, they are the last ones to change the policies. We are the ones that have to force the change of policy on them. And we do that by changing public opinion. That's why I wrote a book about drones, drone warfare, killing by remote control. I've been traveling to over 200 cities talking. People in this audience have been doing the same thing. We are educating school by school, church by church, local media station. We are changing public opinion, and we're starting to see a shift in policy. How do we know that? Well, we know it by some of the reports that have come out from anonymous officials who say because of the growing opposition to drones, not just in this country, but certainly in the places we are using them, like in Pakistan, where the vast majority of people are outraged by the drones. Pakistan, the same thing, as we will hear from our delegates today. And so this has started to shift. The number of drone strikes have been going down. The number of civilians killed in the drone strikes has been going down. But this is not enough. We have to look at what we have done and account for what we have done and apologize to the families that we have destroyed, compensate those families for what we have done. We have to stop the killing that continues to go on now, and we have to change the policies for the future, because this is not what we want our world to look like.